time, but maybe not everyone is so well attuned with this. So starting with Martin.
Yeah, I'm Martin Köppelmann, and yeah, started Gnosis many years ago together with Stefan.
Yeah, I guess Martin already answered the question. I'm Stefan, and yeah, right now my main focus is actually on making Gnosis Chain a successful ecosystem, and see how we can use all the forces that we have, also with Safe and CowSwap, in order to make Gnosis Chain successful.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Anna, and I have been part of the Gnosis team for a very long time. I think it's now basically 5 years anniversary. But we spun out beginning of this year, and are now our own team, the CowSwap or Cow Protocol team. And yeah, it's an exciting journey since we became independent, and I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I'm Toby. Joined Gnosis in 2018 to work on the Gnosis Safe. We were also one of the projects that spun out recently. We rebranded to Safe, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Teck. Hello.
It works, it works.
Oh, it works now? Okay. Hi, I'm Teck, the newest member of the Gnosis team, I guess. I'm part of Gnosis Builders. It's an organization that just got a grant from the Gnosis DAO to help build the ecosystem and to grow the ecosystem of the Gnosis chain. Yeah.
Great. So before we start, maybe Martin and Stefan, could you give us a little bit of the history of your vision and how you got here?
You want to start?
Yeah, sure, you can start. Yeah, so Gnosis certainly started with a different vision, and kind of just the events, the last essentially the history of the last 7 years of Ethereum brought us here. So initially we wanted to build prediction markets at a time where Ethereum was not yet live. So kind of there were only test nets, and so we were quite optimistic. So we thought, okay, when Ethereum launched, 2 months later we want to have a working prediction market and so on. Of course, then it turned out when we launched, there was no MetaMask, there was no ERC20 token standard. Lots of infrastructure were simply not in place, and that is then how various projects got started. For example, the history of the Safe, or the project that is now the Safe, was 3 years after we started Gnosis. We did our token sale, and at that time there was no multi-sig contract that could hold tokens. So there was a multi-sig contract by the Ethereum Foundation, but it could only hold Ether. It was not couldn't hold tokens. So Stefan built the multi-sig contract that then later became the Safe. And a similar story is with what's now CowSwap. That was initially Gnosis protocol, and it was once planned to kind of be the trading platform for prediction markets. And in a way, that prediction market, well, we also built that, so Omen existed, but didn't got a lot of traction. So at some point, we simply decided, okay, the prediction market thing is not working, is not taking off, but all the pieces we are building or have been built, they became, quite substantial parts of the Ethereum ecosystem. And then this was simply the decision, okay, well, let's continue to build out those pieces.
Yeah, and I think we also always saw ourselves as being like an ecosystem player. So at the beginning, people were wondering, why are you building like the multisig, for example? There is no business model behind this, and it's just like, why are you even doing this? But we always saw there's a lot of pieces needed in order to build an ecosystem, make it overall successful. And we were fortunate enough also to have the resources in order to invest into the ecosystem, and so we could build all the different parts that, from our perspectives, were missing at the time. And that's also kind of how we got involved in core protocol development. So some people think that the reason why we took over Open Ethereum was because we already had plans for Gnosis chain. I can guarantee you this was not the case. Like, we really took over Open Ethereum because we saw the potential that we can continue operating this client. We already had expertise in Rust, or like we had a team that had expertise in Rust development, and there was really no other party in the ecosystem that could do this. So we decided, okay, we step up, we take on this infrastructure, and we really try to maintain it. In hindsight, it turned out to be very difficult, and we ultimately, this client is not maintained anymore. But it was just like to explain, like, we really wanted to invest into the ecosystem, what we also do still today, obviously. And of course, it also gave us much more exposure to the generally client development, and also made us more confident ultimately to take on a role or like join forces with teams that work on operating like an actual independent network. And we've been also like heavily supporting another client team, also at the beginning without any association to Gnosis chain, with the Aragon team, to build like the most efficient Ethereum client implementation, because we always saw we need to push further than we are today. Because to be honest, like when we started Gnosis, and I would have been asked like, where are we in 5 years? I would have guessed like either we really reach mass adoption or we are bankrupt. So that's it. Now we are like 7 years in, and we don't have mass adoption, or in my view, not meaningful adoption. It's not enough. We need much more than this. But we still have unlimited funds, or seemingly unlimited funds. And the reason why I'm still working in this industry, to be honest, is because I still see the need for getting to way more meaningful adoption than we have today. Like, I really like the Safe, obviously, as a project, but I would like it even more if you would give a lot more users access to it. And that's kind of what excites me today.
Great. Well, what an exciting journey to see that you've started building the building blocks and just continuing to innovate throughout the years. And I'd like to ask the other panelists, like, on your specific project that you're working on, like, what was the history and where are you now?
Yeah, I can start. So as I said, I'm part of CowSwap or Cow Protocol, and Martin already gave a little bit of like an introduction into this. Back then, in 2017 is when I joined. We were mostly focused on prediction markets. And for prediction markets, you of course also need more infrastructure. And I think the thought behind building a trading mechanism derived from the need of having an efficient market where you can trade these outcome tokens that you're creating for prediction markets. Because prediction market tokens are obviously not so liquid tokens, and if you were to try to trade them on a normal limit order book exchange, you would have a huge spread between the ask and the bid price. And for that matter, basically the idea derived to have a batch auction mechanism that would make trading significantly more efficient. And yeah, this is basically how it all started. And I think also, to be honest, that back then, like basically the whole discussion around MEV, right, like maximal extractable value, was already a topic since 2014. Back then, not a lot of people actually looked into it, but it was the ecosystem was already aware that this is a problem. And through batching, you can actually avoid these negative externalities of MEV, right? Like if you have one unique clearing price on each Ethereum block, you can avoid the issue of this value extraction that you have otherwise if you have multiple different clearing prices within a single Ethereum block. And I think this was kind of like already a side thought that at least Martin and Stefan had when we started working on batch auctions. And yeah, that was basically the start of it.
The Safe. I mean, Martin also already touched on this. The basically start of the Safe, or of the predecessor, was during the token sale, when there was simply no solution out there to store or to manage funds collectively on Ethereum. And that's when the Gnosis multisig came to life, written or developed in a time where gas prices weren't really an issue. And so lots of things were stored on-chain, and eventually that was not really sustainable, also hard to use. And that's when the safe was born, and where we did a couple of things differently. We focused more on off-chain signatures and only put necessary things on-chain. And it wasn't only Gnosis that was requiring or needing like a way to manage funds collectively on-chain. It was many other projects. It's kind of like this building block that's needed in order to allow basically organizations or crypto-native organizations to thrive. And eventually, we also spend a lot of time or effort into educating or kind of like highlighting and the other advantages of what you can do with a safe or with more generally smart contract wallets. So besides the fact that you have these multi-signature schemes, there are other advantages. You can have transaction batching, and then eventually more use cases were kind of implemented, or the safe was, or smart contract wallets were used in different use cases. Many DAOs use the safe nowadays, also many bridges, even though it's not ideal, but well, they are multi-sigs. And so now, as part of the spin-off, we want to even widen this up even more by allowing integrations on all different levels of the stack, starting from the protocol layer, the contracts, over a backend infrastructure, transaction indexing, all the way to the front end, where we would like to allow everyone to integrate, ideally in a permissionless way, because we would like to, we believe that smart contracts accounts, like every activity on-chain, should originate from contract accounts, and we're not quite there yet. It is still a little bit of a hassle, and we're working towards making that much easier, to basically allow users to different use cases. Yeah.
Just one interesting fun fact, maybe you can talk about that. Actually, the first version of or kind of the first product around the safe was actually not the safe as most people know it right now, kind of this thing more for teams, but it was actually, maybe you can talk about it.
Right, yeah. I mean, it was, I guess 2018, 2019, where we believed, well, mass adoption is around the corner, and we wanted to build a wallet, a mobile wallet for end users, and it was, I mean, I still think it was great. It was basically this mobile wallet, one key on there, and then you could have a second, like a 2FA device, essentially. It was a Chrome extension back then, and we did build something that worked for some users. However, we weren't willing to make some trade-offs we needed to make in order to really be interesting for really like retail usage. And then on the other hand side, for the technical audience that was basically for the space, it was not, I guess, generic enough, not sufficiently generic. And so we ended up with something in the middle, not really working for either side, and hence we did a bit of a pivot to focus first on this multi-signature aspects for teams, which there we learned quite fast that there was more traction compared to that retail use case we focused on before.
I'm actually still using that wallet. Oh, I think more recently, like a few weeks ago, so it stopped working as a sign-up. But until then, I was still using it as one of my...
Yeah, it's even, I mean, we had Relay, we built a relayer inside Gnosis, something, I mean, nowadays there's a couple of relayers out there. I don't think we would build our own relayer again, much more collaborate with other teams. But yeah, that's not many things were around back then.
So now that you're you've created all these building blocks, you're, spinning them out, and, Gnosis came to life. Could you tell us a little bit about your vision on Gnosis Chain?
You want to go, or? Yeah, I mean, it can start with certainly the history. So the history was as many projects, 2 years ago, there was a situation where we had various applications, CowSwap, Safe, but also, back then Omen and so on. And it was just clear on Ethereum, it's not going to work because the gas prices are way too high. And basically back then, XDAI, which now became Gnosis Chain, was to us the most, or kind of, we did an evaluation of the different solutions out there, and it was like still pre rollups, and XDAI was the solution that simply worked at the time. So that was a decision to say, okay, now for everything that is meant to use or to reach consumers and have kind of acceptable gas prices, we will deploy all those things on XDAI. And then roughly a year later, we felt like now is the time, or we simply saw that the chain was not reaching its full potential, I would say, or that there were a ton of interesting experiments going on the chain, and that is what we loved about it, that it was really a chain of builders and kind of an organic ecosystem. And we felt we could join forces with this chain and turn it into a long-term or give it a long-term vision. And the core idea was to get rid of fairly permissioned system, kind of this well, it started as a proof of authority chain with just a handful of validators, and then had kind of this delegated proof of stake. But we wanted to have the full Ethereum decentralization. So the big move was and is to start a beacon chain, Gnosis beacon chain, very similar to the Ethereum beacon chain, with now 100,000 validators on the Gnosis beacon chain, and make it a community-run chain. So our main focus right now is to say we want as large and as diverse as possible validator set, and we want absolutely this idea that you can run a validator at home, and that the users of the chain also run the chain. Yeah, that is one of the core ideas. And maybe to extend a little bit on that, we feel like there are plenty of other, in a way, side chains or layer 2s that offer something similar, but many of them, I mean, we all face this trilemma between decentralization, security, and scalability. And I would say many others choose to compromise on decentralization. And that's one point where we say we don't want to compromise on decentralization. So on Gnosis Chain, we say kind of decentralization first, and then of course we try to push the others as far as possible, but we won't compromise on decentralization.
Amazing. Teck, I know that you joined recently Gnosis Chain to look after the ecosystem. What is the strategy there, and what is your team doing?
Yeah, so as mentioned, Gnosis Chain is very new, and we have essentially moved to a different architecture, and sort of we kind of started in May. Essentially, we just finished our first quarter, so we focus our efforts on developer experience and also user experience, which means that you want to have ease of use for both developers and users. Developers, of course, they have different workflows, one of which we ship several things to improve those things. We ship a faucet, we ship, on the user side, we went out to different wallets to get them to integrate Gnosis Chain, as well as make it easy to acquire Aglaé, which is the native token that pays for the gas fees. And then we have another thing coming up called Wallet Finder to make it easy for people to find a wallet that could be used on the Gnosis Chain. So that was last quarter, and we found, as Martin mentioned, we are going towards to become one of the most decentralized, if not the most decentralized chain. So our next quarter is going to be focused on really, decentralization aspect of it. And we want to really focus on increasing what we call the Nakamoto coefficient. I'm sure a lot of people here already know that coefficient, meaning that correlated validator sets could be either captured together or failed together. So we want to increase the number of uncorrelated validator set, and that's a problem also faced in Ethereum and a lot of most chains out there. Most chains are not really decentralized, which is also, leads to problems which will be discussed in the next panel, where things can be captured, and then things are not neutral. Neutrality is lost, and then it's not censorship resistant, and things like that. So next quarter, we really focus on those things, and eventually we'll, hopefully, if everything goes right, we'll have the most resilient block space in the ecosystem, and we'll have apps or dApps that really need that resilient block space come to us, and then we'll, continue that mission.
So if I want to build a project or a decentralized app, I come to you, or I just, how do I get more information?
How do you get more information? I mean, we are, of course, you have gnosischain.com. That's, the easiest way to find us. We have Twitter, we have, the usual crypto channels, and we are at many different conferences. We sponsor a lot of hackathons. We are highly engaged with the developer community. I personally only go to developer conferences. As I said, because next quarter is going to be very focused on the validation subsystem to increase the decentralization there. We'd love to work with partners in the audience perhaps to work together towards that goal. So
amazing, thank you. And so we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to dive into the roadmap of each project as you guys are spinning out. Like, what's your immediate and maybe more long-term roadmap? Maybe starting with you, Anna.
With me? Yeah, sure. So essentially, the more immediate roadmap is that we want to, CowSwap right now is deployed on mainnet and on Gnosis chain, but we also want to be available on more layer 2s and side chains. So this is on the roadmap, and I think we will probably start, with Polygon and then roll out to a few more. But then there's limit orders. This is something that is highly requested by our users that we are rolling out as well, hopefully until end of this year. And then a few other features that are more playing into our, maybe into our USP. For example, since we are batching orders together, we can increase the chances of several transactions being matched if we increase the time period that we wait. But about 50% of our users do not necessarily want to wait for their transaction to be mined. So the idea is that we launch a feature that allows users to choose whether they want their trade to be executed soon or if they're willing to wait for a bit. So those are the more immediate term features that are in our roadmap. More interestingly, maybe on the vision, is that I think at Devcon, we have a lot of talks evolving again around MEV right now. And it is really a serious issue. And this is actually why it's so interesting what Martin and Stefan were saying about decentralization of Gnosis chain. Because right now on Ethereum mainnet, you have a strong force towards centralization of the validator sets. Then it's being outsourced to proposer builder separation. But now you have a strong centralization of the block builders. And that's a huge issue. CowSwap is also trying to fix that to some extent by moving this problem of causing the MEV to the application layer. So we are trying to capture or not expose any MEV via the transaction that we settle. And to have a stronger impact on avoiding MEV is we have to become bigger. And for this, we want to ensure that we are able to place a batch for each block on Ethereum. And this is basically more long-term where we are heading.
Yes, for Safe. We recently launched SafeDAO, so that was definitely top of mind for the entire team for the last couple of months. Moving forward, we have 3 main areas that we kind of want to make progress on. The first one is decentralization and essentially making the project more resilient. Currently, Safe, while obviously it's a self-custodial wallet, the smart contracts, everything is open source. There's definitely not a master key or something like this, and still it's too dependent on the current core team. Just to name one example, backend services are almost exclusively run by the core team, and if that one goes away, it will be quite hard for if not the entire ecosystem, for quite a number of projects to operate, and until everything is back up. So that's something, that's the first main area. The second one is what we call tokenized value. So there is a Safe token, and the Safe provides value to a number of projects. There's projects that build on top, that use the Safe, and also vice versa. Safe benefits from other integrations as well, not only for marketing and branding, but we get valuable feedback. And so we would like to establish the Safe token and tokenize that value to benefit also both sides. One, to allow the projects to have a bit bigger say and influence into some of the decisions that Safe does, and also basically vice versa, that they are represented in a better way. And then the third area is build an ecosystem. We're not only this multi-signature wallet, but basically we want to support a big range of use cases. And so we do, in some way, the opposite of focusing. And so the only way that works is by, allowing for integrations, working, like building a community, allowing others to integrate, and that starts with building SDKs, that starts with lots of education, and so I would say those are the 3 main areas that are on our roadmap and where we derive specific features from.
Maybe to also make the connection, so of course, well, we want continuously a close collaboration with those 2 projects. So the obvious thing is we want on Gnosis chain midterm every account to be a Gnosis Safe, or be a smart contract, and many of them, of course, then be in a very it will be a very different look and feel, like from how you use Safe as a team right now. It will be then this individual use case, much more similar to kind of the first Safe app or to an Argent today. So that's one thing on the Safe, and of course, like we want to natively support this 4337 EIP, so you don't need to worry about having to have gas on your own account, but those essentially the Safes are first-class citizens on the chain. And to the second point to Anna, so of course on Gnosis chain, we will sooner or later also face the same centralization forces on because of MEV, and well, we want to tackle them or we are aware of them and want to tackle them as good as we can. So if we can have a batch, kind of a cow swap batch each block where we have those single clearing prices and therefore have less MEV, and therefore hopefully have one centralization force less on Gnosis chain.
Yeah, maybe speaking about the roadmap for Gnosis chain itself, as Teck mentioned, our vision and mission is to build the most decentralized network. And sometimes people ask me, like, why are you trying to build the most decentralized network? Many people actually, even our industry, sometimes doubt that there's like value in decentralization, surprisingly. And many developers look more for we need cheap transactions, or like we need, I don't know, users, but decentralization is not so important. I think the reason why we initially joined Ethereum is because we saw it was not censorship resistant, really. I mean, this is also obviously very important, but it was more the value also of having a platform that is incredibly neutral, that allows you to have permissionless innovation, where like, I can build software, and this software will always be there, and other people can build around it. And I think that's also what fostered the Ethereum ecosystem, because I think we all benefited from the software that others implemented, was open source, available for everyone. That's how the safe became super successful, because everyone knew, like, this is the contract I can build around, and this is how you build an ecosystem. And right now we have lots of like small projects, and we all say always that we're very early. And that's why probably also decentralization doesn't matter that much, because like many applications are not relevant. But as soon as you want to get to a stage where it's relevant, then it really matters. And then you need to be credibly neutral. Otherwise, you're not going to deploy on this network. And that's why we double down on decentralization. And this is also why our roadmap is very much tied towards decentralization. The first thing that we're going to do next is the merge itself. So obviously, the merge already happened on Ethereum. And initially, our goal was to front-run the merge of Ethereum, with the idea to kind of showcase that everything works as expected and be like a front-runner. Turned out this is actually a very complicated undertaking, especially because we don't have exactly the same setup as Ethereum had. So that's why it was now delayed by a couple of weeks. But as soon as the merge is done, then I think we can actually claim that Gnosis Chain, even today, or like in a couple of weeks' time, is actually one of the most decentralized networks, probably the most decentralized after Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I think that's already very valuable. But obviously, it's not the end. Like, we want to double down on it. We actually incentivized a lot of users to become validators on this network. So we collaborated with a company called Devcon. We incentivized users with GNO tokens to purchase those Depp nodes and become validators on those networks. So we have now literally like hundreds of users that run their own hardware at home to validate this network. And yeah, I think it's pretty difficult actually to shut it down. And yeah, that's, I think, a very good like basis to operate really complex global applications on top of it. And yeah, that's what we want to double down on, and that's what we work with Teck on. Like, how do we define the right metrics to actually prove that, yeah, it's actually decentralized, and that we can also set incentives so it can be even further decentralized. And yeah, that's, I think, a very important base layer that, besides Ethereum, doesn't really exist. And I think even Ethereum, I think we discuss in the next session, there's definitely room for improvement. And I think there we can actually become maybe more of a front runner than we were with the merge, to showcase like how can you decentralize better, or like how can you make sure that we don't allow market forces to create centralization. And yeah, that's obviously super important.
To give an example here, so obviously on Ethereum, the requirements to become a validator are 32 Ether, so $40,000 to $50,000. So, well, our message would be as many as people, or if you want to become a validator, start on Gnosis Chain, because there it's one GNO, it's currently $100, whatever, $20, something like that. So start there, and some will then also become validators for Ethereum, and that would be a great outcome. But yeah, that's a way how we can, in a way, also help Ethereum to decentralize, but make it, yeah, first as easy as possible, yeah, on our chain.
Amazing. So you can help the decentralization of the chain through validating nodes. What else can this amazing audience here in the room do to engage with your various projects? And just to wrap it up for the panel.
Good question. Yeah, so like obviously it's a permissionless network. We appreciate everyone who starts building on top of Gnosis Chain. I think one important aspect that Martin already mentioned and Toby already mentioned is that we want to double down on the account abstraction. And maybe to give the reason, like, why do we want to do this? So I mentioned like mass adoption is definitely something that is very important to us. And I really don't see a future where we can reach mass adoption without account abstraction. This is because the user experience that we currently have, where you have like a private key controlled account, have seed phrase, backups, eventually lose access to everything, or someone steals access and then you lose everything. This is just not going to work with a lot of users. And so we are going to double down on this and make sure that every developer who wants to develop on Gnosis Chain can expect that there is account abstraction can take advantage of this, and this will lead to a much, much better user experience than users have today, and I think it's one of the enablers ultimately to reach also mass adoption. And yeah, so that's something we want to make very concrete very soon. And I think if you are interested in like taking advantage of this, then yes, yeah, like reach out to us.
Yeah, build apps, run validators.
All right. Well, with this, I want to thank our panel. Thank you so much for all your insights on where Gnosis is heading and the various projects.